Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Weatherization Repayment Assistance Program webinar. My name is Dan Fingus, and I'm the Climate Action Coordinator for the Vermont Natural Resources Council. This is part of our series of winter webinars that provide education, tools, and support to local energy leaders. I hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is the State Legislative Briefing webinar on Wednesday, April 10th at noon. I'll drop the link in the chat. Please also save the date for Saturday, June 1st. We'll be hosting our in-person Spring Summit in South Royalton. Registration opens next week, and capacity for the event will be limited, so be on the lookout for that registration email. As part of today's webinar, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please put any questions that you think of into the chat, and we will get to as many of them as we can. Today's webinar is a conversation about the Weatherization Repayment Assistance Program. We have with us today Mia Watson, the Special Programs Manager at Vermont Housing Finance Agency, to talk with us about the benefits of WRAP, who in the community qualifies, and how you can help community members take part in the program. Welcome, Mia.
Great, thank you for having me, Dan. I'm excited to share about WRAP. Yeah, I think feel free to jump in. It'll be hard to monitor the chat, but feel free to jump in with any clarifying questions, but I think we'll have plenty of time on the end for more substantive questions. So I think it's helpful to just explain a little bit about what Vermont Housing Finance Agency does for those who aren't familiar, because I think it helps explain sort of how we got involved in WRAP and what our role is in the program. So we are a quasi-public financing agency. At a really simplistic level, we're like a bank for affordable housing. We offer home mortgages and down payment assistance to low and moderate income households. And we also do a lot of development work, offering tax credits and loans to housing developers to build affordable rental and homeownership projects. And we do a lot of extended oversight and management to ensure quality and affordability for households over the long term. Our work, in some ways, we've always been involved in energy work because we have highly energy efficient home building standards that we work with, including with other partners like Vermont Housing and Conservation Board in the state of Vermont. But in many ways, energy financing is sort of a new initiative for this program. And through our WRAP pilot, we're eager to explore how we can bring financing, especially energy efficient financing, to help support Vermont's housing stock, which we know is some of the oldest in the country and has severe housing needs, and better meet the needs of Vermonters. So this initiative was sort of brought to bear through a bunch of different partners and organized by the Energy Action Network, EAN. And they set a goal of how Vermont could weatherize 120,000 total homes. That was based on an estimate of, the number of homes that are older and haven't been weatherized by the state agencies or state utilities, and what would be needed to sort of weatherize all homes that are likely to need it in the state of Vermont, especially those of low to moderate income households, and especially renters who previously haven't been served by the non-weatherization assistance programs. Through that, it was determined that the best way to do that was to expand financing options for people who didn't qualify for a lot of the free state weatherization assistance, but who also may lack the financing capacity. And that was sort of where VHFA came in, because as a housing financer, we have the capacity to explore new financing models and help bring sustainable models to a weatherization financing program. And so the coalition efforts resulted in a $9 million state appropriation to fund a moderate income home weatherization program. So the WRAP model, so it's the Weatherization Repayment Assistance Program, WRAP, involves VHFA providing capital, that's loan money, and up to $1,500 in incentives for the upfront costs of home weatherization projects, which will recycle over time to new customers. This financing is structured as on-bill, which is repaid on the customer's existing utility bill. It's similar to some other on-bill programs that have been developed around the country, including the PAYS and PACE programs, but Vermont has put its own spin on it, which I'll discuss more as the presentation goes on, to help hopefully tailor it to Vermont needs and make the program more feasible for more households. So this on-bill financing has a term of up to 15 years, but it's restricted to up to 90% of the useful life of the equipment. So we don't want people to be in a situation where they have installed something that they're still paying for after that is no longer delivering energy savings. So to be conservative, we cap it at no more than 15 years or 90% of the lifetime of the weatherization improvements. And we'll talk about what that means later on as well. And one major feature of the program that stakeholders thought was very important was that it was intended to be cash flow positive. So that means that the amount that's paid back to the RAP program should never exceed the annual savings from the reduced energy bills. So not only are households who participate going to enjoy the benefits of a more comfortable home, they're also supposed to see they're supposed to see energy savings over the term of their loan. And obviously that's something we can't guarantee because we don't know about future usage. So it's based on the expected energy savings at the time that the customer is engaged in an energy audit. And the RAP charge includes a 2% interest charge that's charged by VHFA to make the program run, and a small monthly fee charged by the utility doing the on-bill repayment. And so that usually puts it well below the going interest rate for most financing, especially since we're in such a high interest rate environment for most types of lending. So we've had great support and participation for Vermont utilities. Burlington Electric, Efficiency Vermont, the Village of Ludlow, Green Mountain Power, Vermont Electric Co-op, and Vermont Gas are all participating in the program. And I'll explain how each of them are involved in looping customers through the process. So I think seeing the RAP process is really helpful to understand how customers will interface it and VHFA's role in the project. So VHFA definitely plays a behind the scenes role. We're kind of like the bank in this transaction. It starts with the program administrator, and those are the state's energy efficiency utilities, Vermont Gas, Burlington Electric, and Efficiency Vermont. So customers who are interested in the program start with the program administrator for their area, and they do the initial eligibility review and project screening. For clarification, a lot of Vermont Gas customers are also Burlington Electric customers, but if you're in Burlington Electric territory, but you have a Vermont Gas, a home service by Vermont Gas, then you're a Vermont Gas customer. And the same with Efficiency Vermont. All Vermont Gas customers go to Vermont Gas, even if they would, otherwise see rebates through Efficiency Vermont. So that's something that is coordinated among the EUs to make sure there's a sort of similar level of service for all participants. So the program administrators will connect customers who want to move forward with a program with an approved contractor. And customers can also work directly with a contractor to be brought into the program, and the EEUs are doing a great job of informing contractors about the program and getting them enrolled so they can offer the RAP to their customers. The approved contractor, or in some cases an in-house staff member from one of the EEUs, will work with the customer to perform an energy audit, develop a list of measures, and figure out what the estimated savings would be. Then the program administrator will determine if the project works so that it meets the energy screening targets. Some projects we unfortunately aren't able to fund if they don't have the energy savings necessary to make the project screen or be cash flow positive. And they also review projects for their own energy incentives so that they seamlessly work those incentives into the project. So the customer doesn't have to, in most cases, pay for rebates and then be reimbursed. It's supposed to, as much as possible, flow within the project. And then they determine, what incentives and the amount of RAP funding that will be needed. And then VHFA confirms that we'll sort of pre-fund the deposit if needed for the contractor. And then once the customer is, understands the project and wants to move forward, the contractor will complete the work. So VHFA is sort of in the process with the program administrator, reviewing the project, reimbursing the program administrator who's paid the contractor so that the project work gets done. And then VHFA works directly with the customer's gas or electric utility to let them know about the new charge and arrange to have the utility pay us back over time. So what will happen is the RAP customer will pay their normal electric and gas bill plus the RAP charge, and then the utility will take a small fee, usually $3, and then they'll remit the rest of it to VHFA. VHFA will hold the money and then we'll lend it out over time to other households participating in the program. So, we will sort of be in the project for the full 15 years or up to 15 years and slowly lend that money back over time. So we're definitely, it's a long-term process that we're involved in it. So what types of projects can RAP finance? So RAP has to include comprehensive weatherization, and that's done at the Home Performance with Energy Star standard. So every project is really different, and every contractor and energy audit is going to be looking for the most energy saving projects. A lot of that includes insulation and air sealing. That's the main most effective weatherizing energy saving measures. Window and door replacements, we get a lot of questions about that, are not allowable under the program, and that's because they're not part of the home performance weatherization standards. And what I've been told from weatherization experts is that window and door replacements are really costly, and they don't tend to deliver the energy savings in line with the amount of cost that you'd have to deliver to it. So things like air sealing and insulation are a lot comparatively cheaper and can deliver better energy savings to let those projects screen with our cash flow positive requirement. So we get a lot of questions about that. RAP is also able to finance heat pumps, heat pump hot waters, heaters, advanced wood stoves, and as well as health and safety measures. So every project has to have comprehensive weatherization, but if the customer is interested in doing energy saving equipment as well, if it fits within the scope of the RAP project, they can also do that, and they can also put in other rebates and incentives towards that equipment as part of the RAP model, and the balance can be funded with RAP. We're also excited to offer health and safety measures when we can. That's something like if someone discovers vermiculite or an immediate safety problem that's connected with the home weatherization, RAP can also finance that as part of it. Although it can certainly be challenging based on health and safety measures not yielding an energy savings, so that can make it projects harder to screen. That's something we're taking a look at to figure out if there's other resources that could provide more health and safety funding for projects that don't deliver energy savings but are really important. And so in addition to window and door replacement, RAP also does not cover electric vehicle charging systems, solar panels, or plug-in appliances. That's something that I think long-term we'd like to think about doing, but is sort of out of scope for the initial weatherization focus program that we're running. And so who's eligible? So the idea with this program, I think I mentioned, is really to reach people who are otherwise not getting access to funding for weatherization. So people under 80% of AMI are supposed to be able to be served by the state's weatherization assistance programs. Doesn't always happen. So people under 80% AMI aren't restricted from participating, but they we're encouraging those to look at the WAP programs instead, because it's free services that could help them. And certainly people above 120% AMI are likely to have more financing ability to take out a home energy loan or other financing available through the EUs or other partners. And so, it's always, we have this wonky housing language about percentage of area median income, but this sort of income targets come from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they're used all over the place in state and federal programs. But on the screen, you can see that the area median incomes are, basically it depends on which county and what household size. So everyone's area median income will be slightly different depending on their household size and where they live. But 80% AMI is $78,600 for a family of 4, and 120% AMI is $117,800 for a family of 4. So it's a pretty wide age income bracket, and that's if people have questions about the AMI, I'd be happy to share a table where we have more extended income limit information. And I think it's important to note that households over 120% AMI can participate, and at this point, we're not preventing them from participating, but we're monitoring the funding because 75% of total RAP funding is restricted to households under 120% AMI. So we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll be making sure that, we're channeling funding and letting people know what the eligibility is as we get down to having allocated more program funding. So the major underwriting criteria that we use to determine someone's eligibility besides their income is that they have a clean bill payment history with utilities. And so that means that in the last 12 months with their gas or electric utility, they can have missed no more than one payment per year and have been caught up by the next billing cycle. And initially we had that there could have been no missed bill payment history, which is I think common in other states that have done this, but we realized it's fairly common to have someone whose credit card got hacked or something changed in their lives and they just missed a payment, but got caught up relatively quickly. But that's our main criteria for determining whether someone's eligible or not eligible. Both homeowners and renters can participate, and renters have to have landlord approval. That's something that's pretty unusual in a program like this, and something we're kind of trying to test in this pilot to see how it works. It's going to be most complicated in multifamily buildings and other building types. But basically, if a renter wants to participate, they work with their landlord to get the landlord's permission, and then the charge goes on the renter's utility bill for the time that they live in the building. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. RAP can be used to weatherize single-family homes, manufactured homes, and multifamily buildings of up to 4 units. However, multifamily buildings need to have a single meter in the building owner's name. And that's just done because when you have multiple units in a building, it becomes really tricky to model the energy savings and allocate them fairly. For instance, if I weatherize the attic of a house, I could have benefits for someone on the first floor who, so they're getting the benefits of the weatherization and they're seeing a lower utility bill, but it's not getting attributed correctly to their utility bill. So once you get into multiple units, it gets really tricky to allocate those. So in that case, the multiple buildings would have to have a single meter in the building owner's name. However, there are a lot of Vermont renters who are living in single-family homes, so we're hoping that this program will be adopted by renters as well, and we'll keep looking forward to other ways to address the needs that we know exist in multifamily buildings. So, I've touched on a few of these topics, but I think it's really helpful to see sort of why we designed the RAP program different ways, and what the problems we were trying to solve is, and the common barriers in weatherization that we've seen that prevent moderate income households from participating. So, high upfront costs. That's a big reason why many people don't weatherize their homes. RAP combines utility and VHFA incentives with an on-bill repayment over time, and that greatly reduces and sometimes eliminates upfront costs. Sometimes, depending on the project scope and what screens and doesn't screen, a homeowner does still have to submit a payment to cover part of the project, but since the utility incentives are so high these days, we're seeing so far that most projects don't need a lot of owner contributions in order to participate. Another issue is, and also one thing that I didn't mention on the slide that's just super helpful is that we've heard that people really appreciate just having their payment on an existing utility bill. Most people, like the simplicity of just paying on their existing utility bill and not having another loan payment to keep track of. Limited access to credit. We made a really conscious decision to not go with traditional underwriting standards like credit scores, because we know that can be really discriminatory and isn't always the best indication of whether someone's going to pay or not pay with a weatherization type program. So we use the customer's clean bill payment history as an underwriting criteria. And I think it's important to note that VHFA is not going to pursue shutoffs if someone doesn't pay. That's something that through the pilot phase we'll be looking at and kind of analyzing what are the rates of non-payment but since we have state appropriations to fund this program, we're in a position to not use shutoffs and just hope people get caught up over time if they do happen to lose a payment. What I've heard from other programs is that the rate of non-payments and on-bill financing is really low, and it's a great model because people are generally going to pay their electric bill anyways, and it's a convenient way to add on a charge. Long payback period. This is a really big barrier to weatherizing your home. If you don't think you're going to be in your home for a long period of time, that might really restrict you from doing a weatherization program. Especially because these offer real energy savings but are invisible to a new home buyer. It's not like adding a new kitchen. In WRAP, the customer is only obligated to pay the surcharge for the length of the time they occupy the property. So if a customer moves, the new owner or renter of the property will pay the surcharge for the time they live there and experience the benefit of the measures. So if you're an owner, what will happen is when we finance the project, VHFA will record the existence of the WRAP payment and the expected term on the land records with the town clerk. So if you buy a house, that will appear in a property search. And we also offer a disclosure option for, like a piece of paperwork for homeowners to give should they sell within the term of the WRAP program. And then if the renter is involved, what happens is their landlord will sign something saying, either I need to get the new renter to sign on to this program, or I, the landlord, take on the burden of these WRAP charges. So that's something, again, we'll have to see through the pilot phase how that works, but we really wanted to ensure that the WRAP charge was tied to the meter that's seeing the benefits of the weatherization upgrades rather than the individual customer. And then limited availability to renters, which I just touched on. Landlords agree to pay the charge if a subsequent tenant does not sign an agreement, but the landlord's benefiting as well because their rental property is being weatherized at an extremely subsidized rate. So we're hoping that this will see uptake with renters as well. Okay, and then, before I get to questions, it's I was really excited to be part of this webinar is to encourage everybody involved in local energy committee work to share the news on their channels. VHFA is doing some advertising. We've done a Front Porch Forum campaign, which you all may have seen. We're working on another one soon, and we're doing a lot of social media outreach. But grassroots outreach is also super helpful for explaining, the benefits of this program. And you all have local networks, and you know ways that the community gathers and shares information, and that's a great resource to share about WRAP. So we have a sample newsletter post, and the link on there, which I think Dan is also going to share, has graphics like the one here, a flyer, a sample newsletter, and a sample social media post. Oh, thank you for sharing it in the chat, Dan. So that's hopefully, a convenient way to get the word out without, needing to review all the program materials. I think if you are interested in more information, I also sent Dan a copy of our WRAP guide for policymakers that talks a little bit about the program design as well. But this is supposed to be easily shareable information that's useful for consumers. VHFA is happy to work with people directly, but it's also fine to make the ask more tailored for your area. We are encouraging people to reach out directly to Vermont Gas, Burlington Electric, and Efficiency Vermont, depending on their area, so that they can work directly with them to understand, likely project costs, the different incentives that they have available, and create a more seamless approach rather than us just immediately handing them back to one of our program administrators who they're going to have to talk to anyways. So I'll stop there. I see we have a few things in the chat, and let me start there. Okay. So electrical upgrades such as a new panel or rewiring eligible. Generally, if it's connected to the weatherization or the allowable equipment as part of it, that usually counts as a health and safety thing. It gets very confusing because it can be a scoping question of whether it is directly related to the project, and those tend to also be very expensive. So it can be a challenge to get projects to screen when you put something very potentially costly like a new panel or rewiring. It is something that is not ineligible if it fits within the project scope. So Charlie, I'd be happy to try to come up with a better answer if you have more questions, but it's a little situation dependent, but not ineligible. And so how many participants had the WRAP program helped so far? So that's something that's helpful to talk about because I'm hoping to get the word out. We have seen a pretty slow launch with this. Officially, we were supposed to launch in at the end of 2022, and we expected, early 2023 as a launch. We didn't see, due to some technical challenges with some of our program administrators, we didn't see programs really launched until early this fall in September. So that's a slower start than we wanted to get this program off the ground. So far, we've only had 6 finance projects, and we have quite a few more in queue. I'd say about 20 projects in development at various stages, just because it can take a while in our current really contractor workforce strapped environment to get projects through the queue. So we're seeing a much slower uptake than we wanted on this, but we're hearing a lot of consumer enthusiasm for this program. And I think we're all very hopeful, us and the program administrators in the state of Vermont are really hopeful that this is going to, start to snowball and really gain traction among the public as a way to finance this. So currently seeing, fairly slow uptake, but a lot of consumer interest. And I hope that's just a bit of a bottleneck with, the way our contractor workforce is really booking several months out. So happy to talk about that more, but that's the current state of it. Could a farm utilize WRAP for their workforce? Oh, sorry, I missed. The maximum loan amount, does it just depend on the creditworthiness of the customer? So no, the creditworthiness of the customer is just a yes/no review based on whether or not the person has the clean bill payment history. The maximum WRAP financing amount is $20,000. But it has to be placed within the full picture of the program administrator's incentives. But WRAP can finance up to $20,000 if the project screens. Could a farm utilize WRAP for their farm worker housing? That's something we've talked about with our program administrators. I think it's something that we're conceptually interested in, but doesn't necessarily fit into the WRAP model. A lot of those farm worker buildings tend to be unusually sort of shaped buildings, for lack of a better word. So we're not sure if projects like that would screen. That would be one where the landlord would have to pay the charge rather than the tenant, just because in farm worker housing, the bill would not be in the residents of the home's name, usually, just because farm workers usually don't occupy those buildings year round in a typical electric customer or lease model. So that's a sort of wishy-washy way of saying that I think if we could find something that sort of looked like a rental building, we could do it, but there are kind of questions about getting someone to sign off on that. So I don't know that we're going to find a farm worker project that sort of fits the parameters of what WRAP is intended to do, but it's not off the table. And I'm happy to answer questions offline if people have a sort of specific project in mind. I know that Efficiency Vermont in particular is looking into ways that they can help with farm worker housing. It's just a different model than we're used to seeing in sort of traditional electric ratepayer sort of arrangements. Is there funding for a community-owned building like a town hall? No, this program doesn't work for that, just because that's the ratepayer isn't like a household in the same way. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that for a community building. Richard Fazy, so how many contractors are involved in offering WRAP? I would be happy to double check on that. I know it's at least a few dozen. I would just need to do a tally. I'm happy to get back to you if you're interested. There's Vermont Gas offers the program mostly in-house, and then they contract out the work. So their staff handles the energy audits. And I think they have 3 contractors who do the sort of additional work that's not done in-house. And Efficiency Vermont, I believe, has, and BED has a similar model. Efficiency Vermont, I believe, has at least a dozen contractors, and I just need to double check because they keep adding them. I know they added 2 in the last month, and I think they have a decent spread statewide. So, we're hearing sort of different levels of availability across different areas of the state in terms of what contractors are sort of, I guess, how fast contractors are pushing customers through their pipelines. But I think we have good availability pretty much statewide. It's just slower than we'd like. Can this be used for new construction? No, it can't be used for new construction because we don't have the bill savings history. So that's not going to work for the RAP model and determining how much you could save. And then Richard was asking about sharing the recording, which, I'll ask Dan if that's possible. Oh, and Dan already said that. I'm sorry, Dan. And Richard, I'm also happy to talk with you about RAP with your Energy Navigator as well, or share any other materials, because if, it's really an open invitation. If someone sees a way that VHFA could interface with other programs or other community members, we're really happy to do the training to make sure that people are aware of this resource and we can make it available. So happy to do that. Great. Okay. Are there any other questions? Any other feedback about, things we should consider? I should mention that, we definitely see this as a pilot phase for working with the state, figuring out ways that this model works and figuring out how we can make this sustainable and large scale. We very much see this as a pilot start for how you could do this at a larger scale over a long term. The utilities are marketing it too. We've made the resources available to the utilities. We've kind of left it up to them to market. Certainly we've encouraged them to, and I think some of them have maybe shared it on their channels, but we're certainly in conversations with them about ways they could do something like bill pay inserts or things like that.
That looks like the end of the questions, Mia. Wanted to thank you all for joining us today. Also want to thank you, Mia, for this really informative and important presentation. And it's just the start of the conversation. Mia said, please reach out to her with any questions. They're really dedicated to getting this program to be a success and hopefully pass the pilot program even. So I know from working in New York State in the previous jobs that the on-bill financing aspect was a real game changer in New York State. I think if we can get the word out here in Vermont, that it can be a real big plus and hopefully really help a lot more people that aren't being helped right now. This webinar, it was recorded and it will be up on the YouTube page. So we'll share that link with everyone who's registered once it's available on our YouTube page. And please remember to join our next webinar on April 10th for the state legislative briefing. And of course, also our in-person June 1st Spring Summit. That's registration is going to start next week. I hope you all have a great day. Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
for having me.